All right, Thad, give us your perspective or what you think is Chris Young's perspective on what the Rangers are. We know an all-world pitching staff, the offense has been pretty terrible. How are you looking at the Rangers and trying to get into the postseason?
Well, I mean, I think you just summarized it in some regards. You know, the pitching has been probably objectively better than expected. The offense has been significantly less than what they expected. You know, they built a team that was supposed to be just an absolute murderer's row from 1 through 9 in the order. They built a lineup where you came back from a commercial break and you didn't know who you were facing, but it felt like the 2, 3, 4 hitters, regardless of where they were in the lineup. And for whatever reason, it hasn't clicked. They made a tough decision earlier in the season, letting Donnie Eckert go and changing the voice in the dugout from an offensive perspective. But I think this is one of those scenarios where it's up to the players to figure out exactly what's going on, because the talent is certainly there. It's just the production hasn't necessarily come. And as you guys know, pressure is an incredible thing in sports. And I think these guys are dealing with some enhanced pressure right now and trying to navigate some choppy waters. But on the pitching side of things, it's just been spectacular for the Rangers. And hopefully they're going to get Eovaldi back soon, because he has been a bona fide Cy Young contender this year. And deGrom is everything they expected him to be. But up and down that rotation, you know, they've been sitting in the top 5 in the major leagues in productivity out of the starting rotation. Their pen has been solid after some, you know, a little bit choppy waters early in the season. But I think if you're Chris Young, you're sitting there and saying, what is the identity of this team? Billy Beane used to always say you use the first 2 months of the season just to kind of sit back and assess the next 2 months to make the adjustments based upon what you're seeing. And so I think Chris Young is entering that time frame right now where he's thinking, you know, what can we add to this team? Because as much as they haven't had the start to the season they aspired to have, the American League West is not running away with it right now. Each team seems to have a little bit of a flaw that they're trying to navigate. So even though they don't feel they are where they aspired to be, they're really not that far out of contention in the American League West.
Thad, you said that, you know, like the talent is there. And my question is, like, outside of like the first 60 games of 2023 and then the playoffs, this offense has kind of been pretty bad. So, like, are we sure the talent is actually there?
Well, hey, listen, I appreciate you calling me out on that.
Because we're asking ourselves the same thing.
Because I think on paper there is a lot of talent there, but it's the chemistry of the group, which is to say, you know, when they were at their best, they were hitting home runs out of most slots of the lineup, and that's a little bit of a feast or famine approach to your offense. And you know, I think what they're seeing is they haven't, in over that time frame you just referenced, they have been less effective of getting on base. They've been a little bit less effective of playing, you know, dare what I would say is, you know, that small ball concept of getting runners over and getting runners in. They've been a little bit more dependent on the home run than most teams. And, you know, they say you kind of live and die by that approach. In 2023, they were thriving and clicking on all cylinders. Since that point, it hasn't been quite as productive. So I think they are doing a little soul searching there. And then keep in mind, they've had a few key injuries. When that 2023 stretch drive, you know, they introduced a young rookie named Evan Carter, who was supposed to be part of their core and their future. And you know, heck, he came into the playoff scenario and he's sitting kind of in the middle of their order and producing significantly. He's been battling a lot of injuries ever since. And so I think some of the things that some of the players that they thought were going to help bolster that offense have either faltered due to injury or due to some setbacks or due to some exposure that, you know, it is really tough to win when you're exceptional at slugging percentage, which they faltered a little bit on here too, but where they're a little deficient in the on-base percentage.
So, Thad, they bring in our boy, our weekly buddy, Brett Boone. In your experience in the front office, has a switch at hitting coach actually done anything, or are guys just doing their own thing? The switching of a batting instructor, you think will do what or has done what in your experience?
You know, I hate to say this because, you know, I think Brett Boone probably is extremely talented and will have a successful career if this is what he chooses to do. But it is really tough to get a significant change in the middle of a season. Keep in mind, he doesn't have the benefit of spring training, working with these guys in the off season. What professional coaches are doing in the off season is, by and large, they're having touch points with all of their key players, and they're going to visit them. They're working one-on-one with them. They're making sure they're on the same page. Brett Boone was not afforded that ability either in the off season or in spring training. So to come in midstream, absent of having a significant overhaul in the personnel and the philosophy, it's hard to envision there's going to be a significant uplift, especially in light of the fact that Donnie Eckert was an extremely well-regarded coach. So it wasn't as if he was regarded as a very onerous, rigid coach who told guys they had to do it his way or the proverbial highway, and now all of a sudden they're being set free to do it their way. He was known as a pretty forward-thinking hitting coach in Major League Baseball and a collaborator. So I'm not sure you should expect significant movement. Now, the one thing I think you do sometimes get an uplift from is the players kind of having this moment of, wow, we just cost somebody their job. Not that it should take that to get them to make changes, but sometimes it does. That's the stark realization that, oh my goodness, we didn't realize we were going this badly, that it was going to force them to make a change. Now that they have, we got to step up. You guys are watching them night in and night out from a 30,000 foot where I'm watching them. It doesn't seem as if there's been significant change since that point. It seems pretty clear that when their pitching staff holds guys down, which they're doing almost every night, if that offense can post 4 or 5 runs, they're winning ball games. But when they're in a dogfight and it's less than 4 runs from the offense, it puts an undue amount of stress on the pitching.
Former Twins GM and Rangers assistant GM Thad Levine joining us here on 105 through the Fan. Thad, what goes into the evaluation of buying or selling at the deadline? That's something that we're kind of trying to figure out for the Rangers right now. Is it market dependent? Are you just doing a lot of self-scouting and wondering what's the quality of my team? How much does it take to make them competitive? What's the process of evaluating that and deciding, do we buy, sell, or just stand pat?
It's a blindfold and a dartboard. I wish I could tell. I'm just kidding. There's a lot that goes into it. So I think I always felt, and when I was there and had the pleasure of working with John Daniels, we kind of had some very specific criteria. We wanted to be a playoff contending team established with the roster we had. Then we wanted to add to it. And John Hart, who was one of both John's and my mentors, always said, if the team has done its part to be in contention, and we can all debate what in contention means, but if they are in contention, it is the time for the front office to step up and do something that demonstratively helps their playoff push. So that was our goal all the time. So, how that manifested itself was different year over year. Sometimes we were in first place. We were a prohibitive favorite to win the division. That certainly was a qualifier for being in contention, and we were going to push to try to get somebody who could not only help us get there, but perhaps more importantly, help us once we got to the playoffs. But then there were times where we were 5-6 games out of first place, but we believed in the team. We felt the underlying numbers suggested that we needed to step up because this team was about to click. And, that's when we went and got Cole Hamels one year, ended up coming from way behind and ultimately won the division and made a run in the playoffs. So I think it's up to each front office to determine the criteria. We were very clear on this. If we were in contention, we were going to buy. And so, over a 7-8 year period, we ended up buying 6 or 7 times. And then, ultimately that led to a little bit of a lull for the Texas Rangers, which, they then bounced back out of and won the World Series in 2023. I think on the selling side, it's similar. You just don't want to be caught in between. The goal should always be, we're either building to win today or we're building to win tomorrow. But being in between and just standing pat and doing nothing is just a missed opportunity. And I think you then look at your competitors and then you see them actively taking steps to improve the team for today or for down the road. And if you're sitting still, that's an uncomfortable position. So I think we always tried to force ourselves, let's make a choice, let's pick a lane, and let's pursue it, because we just didn't want to be caught in the middle. It's a trade cycle where you have a chance to really impact the fortunes of your franchise, and you don't want to miss on those opportunities. Now, one thing I'll say is you see it once every couple of years. The Detroit Tigers last year were one of the most prominent sellers at the deadline. All they've done since selling at the deadline in 2024 is go on to have the best record in the major league in the major league. So sometimes those sales do inspire activity in the clubhouse, almost despite the guys upstairs. That happens infrequently, but it certainly does happen from time to time.
Thad, we were throwing around ideas of how to get the offense better, trading pitching, taking from our strength. So two-parter here. Which pitcher would have the most return value for the Rangers at the trade deadline? And I know they're not going to trade deGrom, but considering age and contract and injury history, second Tommy John, what is his value on the trade market?
Well, I think so. On the surface, I think he is still regarded qualitatively as, if not the best pitcher in the game, one of the best pitchers. So qualitatively, every one of us who is using, advanced analytics, scouting systems, scouts' eyes, all of those things triangulate to suggest Jacob deGrom is one of, if not the best qualitative pitcher in the game. Now, he comes with a few other factors that have to be considered. Certainly the age is a factor. Certainly his history recently of injuries is of concern. And then so too is the salary. That is going to be a factor as teams view him moving forward. But I would say that teams that can weather the contract have to look at him and say, he's not only somebody who can help us get to the playoffs, but when in the playoffs, he has the ability to not only neutralize, but dominate the best lineups in the game. And he would do it pitching game one of a playoff series. That is worth incredible value to teams. They're going to have to weigh that against the contract. They're going to have to weigh that against injury risk. But there are probably teams out there that would view that as a very positive gain because it will meaningfully enhance their championship odds, not only their ability to get there, but their ability to win a championship. And that's what we're all hunting.
Thad, with the state of the offense, I know you're kind of preaching patience right now. How many bats in a deal do you think it would take to get them to where they need to be a serious contender? Are we talking about a bat that could come in a deGrom deal? It's not going to happen, but one big bat, two mediocre bats, like how much offensive help, if they were to make a deal, do you think this team needs?
I guess I would search from within first and just find out, is there anything we're missing from within? Is there a philosophical change that we can embrace? What would it take to get this team rolling? Because as you guys know, I do believe from watching baseball, hitting is infectious. So too is not hitting. And I think what you guys have experienced is the not hitting part being infectious. But what would it take for you guys to start getting rolling? Is it, Marcus Semien seems like he's getting a little hotter right now. Is it pairing up Marcus Semien with Seager being hot in that middle of that order? Is it that, take some pressure off guys like Wyatt Langford and now all of a sudden he hits another stride? And then you look up and you say, okay, we've got the middle of our order clicking on a lot of cylinders and it just takes the pressure off some of the other guys. You've got some great complementary pieces there, like Smith, who's done extremely well, and he's been it's kind of a Swiss Army knife, both from a lineup standpoint, but also defensively. So I wonder how subtle a change would need to take. Maybe we're not clicking 1 through 9 at that point, but if you got the heart of that order going, they're going to be able to do enough damage to be able to support that pitching staff. And if that pitching staff keeps maintaining ERAs in the low to mid threes, that offense is more than capable of putting up 4 runs a night. Now, searching from without, if you're trading a guy like Jacob deGrom and meaningfully taking a step back from your starting rotation, I think there's a real debate. Are we building for next year, or are we trying to put the return of that in somebody who's going to help us today? That's probably a little bit of a tougher trade to execute because the team that is acquiring Jacob deGrom is not going to want to subtract meaningfully from their offense in the name of getting him, because he is definitely a go-for-it-now player. I think you'd have to view that acquisition on the other side of it as we're doing everything we can to try to win in 2025. And if deGrom continues to perform beyond that, great, but we're not missing on 2025. So I think it's unlikely you're going to be able to get a meaningful, now ready major league bat or bats back in return. That doesn't mean you couldn't get a few guys who are on the horizon with real prospect value, because I do think that's what Jacob deGrom would demand. I think what's more likely that you may have to bring back in that is a salaried player at the major league level. And if the focus is on an offensive player in that deal, that would make sense. I just think realistically, the team who's acquiring Jacob deGrom is pushing a heck of a lot of chips in for 2025. Whoever you're getting back at the major league level is probably less likely to be the impact player or the impact bat that you just referenced in the question.
Thad Levine's podcast is Rosters to Rings. We're getting rave reviews from coworkers and Tolos over Thad's appearance here on the morning show. Thank you so much for the time. Let's do it again, man.